So today we're back to 10.1. We're just going to finish it off with graphing. Now we're going to cheat on the bottom a little bit. It says to basically match these. If you guys remember what a negative did to a square, not a square root function, I'm sorry, a quadratic equation, what it did to the u. That negative, remember, flipped it. So if you look at these, which one of these seems flipped? It would have to be this one, right? Because the other two are going up like that. So this one would go with 5. So 5 is A. Then if you look at B and C, you remember what happened when you had a positive number in the front, like a whole number greater than 1? Remember it made it more narrow? So out of these two, see how this is like more narrow? So 4 would go with C. And then 2/3 made it wider. So this 6 would actually go with B. You could make a chart for each of these, so it should be CAB. But just to kind of show you how it relates back to quadratics. Now on the back is where we're actually going to graph them at the top. So the very first thing it says to graph and then find the domain. So I would start with defining the domain first. So to find your domain, you set whatever's underneath greater than or equal to 0. So I now know when I choose values for this, I can't have an x that's less than 0. So if I put a 0 in here, 4 times 0 is 0. You want to pick perfect squares. So if I put a 1 in, 4 times the square root of 1 is 1. You get 4. My next perfect square, not 2, not 3, is 4. If I put a 4 in, 4 times the square root of 4 is 2, so I get 8. So I'm just going to stop there. I know there's not going to be any negatives, so we're going to make this the first quadrant. So we have 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then and as you can see, okay, it's only in the first quadrant because you have your domain is greater than or equal to 0. Now your range is y. It is always associated with your domain. So your domain is 0, so that's where your range is going to be with the y. So the y, as you can see, is also greater than or equal to 0. For the second one, again, let's find our domain. You set what's underneath greater than or equal to 0. So we know when we make our chart here, we have to start with 0. Square root of 0 is 0. 0 times negative 5 is 0. The next one would be 1. The square root of 1 is 1. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. And then the next perfect square is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So negative 5 times 2 gives me negative 10. So these are all going to make it in the fourth quadrant, right? So we have 0, 0, because all these are negative. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then right at the bottom there. So you can see how that negative flipped it. So our range, again, is paired with this domain. So y is, now it's underneath. So it's not going higher, it's going lower. So it's going to be less than or equal to 0. Same thing with this. Okay, find your domain first. What's ever underneath the square root, greater than or equal to 0. You plug that 0 in, square root of 0 is 0, times anything is 0. Now think about this as 1/4, right? So I don't know if you would really want to put 1 in. Well, I guess we'd have to go up to 16. So let's put 1 in. So the square root of 1 is 1. 1 times 1/4 is 1/4. If we put a 4 in, the square root of 4 is 2. 2 times 1/4 is 1/2. So this is going to be a really flattened out. So 0, 0, 1. I mean, it's going to look like this. Okay. And then your range would be y is greater than or it's going up, pairs with this, so it's 0. What I would do now is maybe try one or two of these at the bottom. I'm gonna keep going. That way this video is not an hour. So domain, again, is x is greater than or equal to 0. So I have, if I plug a 0 in, now you have to be careful. 0 plus 2 is 2, okay? If I plug a 1 in, square root of 1 is 1, plus 2 is 3. Plug a 4 in, square root of 4 is 2, plus 2, you get 4. So you have 0, 2, 1, 3, 4. So how does this, we have to also compare it to this. So how does it compare to that? And you guys should see all the other ones start at 0, 0. So this was moved up 2. So again, your range goes with the y here. Y is greater than or equal to 2 because it's going up. And how does it differ? It's translated up 2. Okay. And then this one, again, you're going to let x plus 3 is all inside, greater than or equal to 0. So when you solve that, you get x is greater than or equal to negative 3. So that's where you want to start your chart, negative 3. If you plug a negative 3 in, you'll get the square root of 0, which is 0. This is where you don't want to just plug in 1 and 4 or whatever. You want to look. So I want a perfect square underneath here. So you can choose negative 2. Because if I put negative 2 plus 3, I get 1. The square root of 1 is 1. I then want to get a 4 underneath, so I'm going to put in a 1. So I get 1 plus 3 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So I'm going to make this, so negative 3, 0, negative 2, 1, and then 1, 2. Okay, so our range, again, is paired with this. So it's going up, greater than or equal to 0. How is it translated? Okay, usually it's right here, right? So we moved 1, 2, 3 left. And it's kind of like what we did with the parabolas. When the inside was plus, remember? Plus whatever, we went left. So it's the same thing, translated left. So without even graphing the next one, I just want to show you what would happen. This negative would flip it, okay? The plus 1 inside would move it left 1. And then that 2 outside would move it up 2 if you actually graphed it. Your domain, you would set x plus 1 greater than or equal to 0. So it would be greater than or equal to negative 1. To get your range, you'd have to plug that in. So if you plug a negative 1 in, you get negative 1 plus 1 and then plus 2. So you get negative square root of 0 plus 2, right? And then you would get negative square root of 0 is just 0 and you get 2. Because it's flipped, it's going to be going down, so y is less than or equal to 2. I'm not going to go through and graph that just for time's sake, but you can go through and graph, and I'll just show you what it would look like. It would look like that guy there. So it's flipped, again, it's moved left 1, and it's moved up 2. Okay, so that's graphing those. So you don't have, besides taking these notes, you don't have an assignment. Have a great weekend.